speaker, Lana Mustafa. She is a Palestinian American and executive director of the Montclair Community Farm. She is, I am very pleased to say, a lifelong anti-war activist and founder of Roots of Resilience, which she will be speaking about today. Lana?
Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing today? Sound check? Comfy? Yes. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Judith and the NJ Peace Action team for organizing and inviting me to join you all today. I am very honored to be here speaking with you all and sharing some information about the work that I am doing, building out a very small grassroots nonprofit called Roots of Resilience. I would be amiss to start today's presentation without talking about my friend Yusuf Abu Rabia, who was an agriculture engineer located in the north of Gaza. He was one of the first people to get back on the land, growing thousands of plants and feeding hundreds of thousands of people in the north of Gaza. Yusuf was 24 years old and he was killed earlier this week. He was targeted after receiving multiple warnings from the IDF to abandon his mission and his resistance in the food siege on Gaza. I'm very inspired by Yusuf and very hurt by his loss, but I know that his vision will continue in Gaza because that's the Palestinian way of moving forward. To give you guys some background history about myself, I am Palestinian American. I was born here in the United States and was raised between New Jersey, Philadelphia, and Palestine. Some of my formative years, I was raised in Palestine, where I was introduced to the love of the land, worked alongside my elders, like my grandfather, grandmother, aunts and uncles, just cultivating the spaces that we had in the olive groves, picking and harvesting and processing and really enriching my connection to the earth. In 2006, I was married and moved from Palestine to New Jersey, where I lived. I'm still in Clifton, actually, where I'm raising my family, and really took on a career of urban agriculture from my backyard to here in Montclair. So in Montclair, I started working for Montclair Community Farms in 2018 as a part-time farm manager, and I'm now the executive director. Food access is very near and dear to my heart. I think, and I hope that many of you will agree, that food is a fundamental human right. Yes, absolutely. And really what has allowed me to do the work that I'm doing here in Montclair and across Essex County is the love and inspiration that I have harnessed from what I've learned in Palestine. My village in Palestine is a very small agricultural village, and community is essential to survival. I've taken a lot of the things that I've learned there and incorporated them here in terms of building community and connecting with one another and really building solidarity. It's almost like common sense and second nature to me. Since October 7th, as a Palestinian, I have fallen into despair. Watching the ongoing genocide has really destabilized me emotionally and mentally. And for the first time ever, I can say that my light is turned down, the inner light, the guiding compass that keeps me going. I traveled to Palestine last summer, 2023, and was introduced to some wonderful and amazing people, connected with some farmers through my work with the Palestinian Heirloom Seed Library. And watching the genocide, of course, was front and center, but then also talking to a lot of my friends in the West Bank who weren't getting the same publicity really shook me. And so I decided to travel back to Palestine this summer in 2024, and the Roots of Resilience was born. I can't say that I had this long-term goal of starting a nonprofit. It was almost like this divine light and energy that kind of like inspired me. I knew that I was going back. I knew that I was going to see my grandparents and try to stay within the village. But something about that didn't settle. I felt like I needed to do something else, something more. And it started with a little conversation with some friends. I said, I'm going to Palestine, and I want to do something, but I'm afraid. I don't know what I'm going to do, and I want to help. And two of my friends said, hey, let's sit down, let's do a fundraiser. No momentum there. And then somebody on Instagram reached out and they said, hey, I heard you're going to Palestine, and if you would do me this favor of carrying some money and distributing it to people in need, that would mean so much to me. And I said, hey, actually, I was thinking about doing a small little fundraiser. And he said, okay, I'll match you for $5,000. And I said, okay, I'm not going to leave this on the table. At this point, things started rolling, and this is exactly 2 weeks before I'm taking off with my 3 kids and heading to the West Bank. With the help of some friends, one who's back there, Alexis, raise your hand. We launched a fundraising campaign on social media that went viral, and in 2 weeks we raised $20,000. Now, bringing us to Roots of Resilience. The reason that I feel so powerful and so passionate about mutual aid is because we have sat behind our screens and watched in horror and helplessness as people have been wiped out and ethnically cleansed and starved and besieged. I needed something tangible, I needed something physically to do, and that's just my nature. And so, Roots of Resilience exists to foster mutual aid and solidarity with farmers in the West Bank. And today, how are we going to do that? By providing mutual aid to farmers directly. So what I learned last year was that people were suffering, and they were suffering economically. That was the hardest impact in the West Bank. People could not go out and make money, and connecting to the land was the most important way for them to do that. Roots of Resilience aims to provide direct aid and also preserve our traditional heritage and practices through educational programs here and abroad. And also raise awareness through storytelling and advocacy, and that's the power of social media. And preserving our agricultural practices through people like Imam Harib, Khadir, and Bisan and Uday. These are just some of the wonderful and amazing faces that I was so lucky and fortunate to meet in 2023. And they are really the powerhouses behind the inspiration that's keeping me going and building out Roots of Resilience. I am going to start talking about Imam Harib, who is a wonderful woman. She's considered one of our elders, and she is a wealth of knowledge. In Palestine, our elders are number one. I will worship my grandparents, listen to anything that they say, and every word of advice feels like gold. And that's something that I've carried with me all of my life. I met Bisan, who is a unconventional tour guide. She's wonderful, and we hit it off through our connection of land while we were traveling Palestine. And she says to me one day, she's like, you really need to meet this woman, Imam Harib. And I was like, yeah, I would love to meet her and talk to her about farming and learn about what she's doing. Little did I know that Imam Harib is actually from the same village that I'm from in Palestine. And she's been farming. She was married to someone from another village, which is where the disconnect came. So she had no idea who I was. I had no idea who she was. But Bisan was this link that brought us together. This photo is actually, the first photo is actually of us as we were driving through Nablus. And we're going full speed on this highway, and this woman is like, stop, pull over. I want to go into this field, and it's a sesame farm, basically. And I was horrified because I'm like, you need to ask for permission to go on this property and take these plants. That's what we would do here in the United States, right? It's trespassing laws. She's like, no, I need these seeds. So she goes over to the neighboring house, and she's knocking on their door. She's like, do you know who owns this plot of land? they're like, yeah, we know them. She's like, I want some of these seeds. We're about 2 hours from home. The guy said, yeah, go for it. Pick whatever you want. She like leaves him a couple shekels. And we go into the field and we like harvest a couple bundles of sesame plants, which she knew, I don't know how she spotted them, but she knew what she was looking for. Those are the seeds that she actually planted, and this is a photo from our 2024 harvest. Imam Hadib is a really important person for the Roots of Resilience because she's actively preserving our tradition. She's actively teaching and educating people, younger generations, about our Palestinian heritage and our culture and connection to the land. She's using sustainability practices, which I am a huge fan of. She's all about reducing and recycling and upcycling, and she's also teaching the younger generation the importance of all of that. She's also a seed keeper, so one of our conversations was about this grain that she's growing, and she's holding on to seeds that are over 100 years old that her great-great-grandparents were growing in the West Bank. And those seeds are older than the state of Israel. Yes, absolutely. Another huge component is that through the Roots of Resilience and supporting the work that's happening on the ground, we're bridging generational gaps. Once again, this feeds into the importance of learning from our elders and respecting that. And there's also resistance in knowledge. The more information that we're taking from Imam Hadib, the stronger and more empowered we feel as young people to actually learn and connect to the land. The next farmer that I'm going to talk about is Khadir. Khadir is a farmer. He is a father of 5. He's from a town called Sab'a Jbir, which means like kind of like between the mountains. I met him through Vivian Samsour, who is the founder of the Palestinian Heirloom Seed Library. And she wanted me to deliver some things to him in 2023. I was able to get there, meet him, connect with his family, meet his mom, and just like share in our love of the land and seed preservation and all good things. As you guys can see in the first photo, he's being helped down a hill because he had broken his foot about 3 or 4 days before my visit. He broke his foot while putting out a fire, which was started by illegal settlers on his land. He had spent most of his funds over the last 2-3 years in establishing a small olive grove farm. And the Israeli settlers came out and started fires. He and a couple other people from his village went out to put them out, and in his haste, he got caught in a rock and fell and broke his foot. Something about Palestinian spirit is that while he was telling me this story, he was hysterically laughing about it. And I'm just sitting there in complete utter horror, just angered and just enraged by what he was saying, but he somehow made light of it. And he laughs and he's like, and to top it off, all of this pain that I was in, I was on a checkpoint for an hour and a half, and he's cracking up laughing, almost like making fun of his pain and suffering. And I think many of us can agree that that's actually a coping mechanism. When this type of suffering and horror becomes so normalized, you have no choice but to kind of accept it and laugh about it. That's his little daughter, Alina, who helped collect these eggs that they're distributing. I think the most inspirational thing about Khadir that I learned this summer is that he has been watching what is happening in Gaza very, very closely. And he is somebody very similar to me that likes to take action. And he saw what the siege on Gaza did, and he started something, an initiative that I was really inspired by. He had a flock of chickens, and he took it upon himself to start breeding these chickens. And I'm telling you, like the resilience and the resolve that you get from this man is just so empowering. It's enough to keep a whole army of people going. he was breeding these chickens, and he's like, every time I have 6 to 8 chickens, 6 to 8 hens, I bring them over to somebody's house and offer them. This way, if we are besieged, if they close the entrances to our village and don't allow us to import or export anything, at least families will have eggs to eat. Not only that, he started seedlings, and he distributed them amongst different households. This is all happening post-October 7th in preparation to what may or may not come. And each house had, a dozen eggplants, a dozen cucumbers, a dozen tomatoes, and he created this barter system so that many of the women who don't really work can actually grow crops and then barter with one another, keeping their food sovereignty going, where there's no need to actually go to the grocery store or travel long distances and reach markets that may actually put you in harm's way. Not only that, but he also inspired a whole entire generation of men. This young man in the first photo, his name is Ahmed, and he was actually working in Israel. So he had a working permit, which would allow him to cross the checkpoint and go into Israel and do day labor, construction, whatever needed to get done. But since October 7th, over 150 to 200,000 men in Palestine have been revoked that right to employment in the state of Israel and have been at home. Khadir is inspiring them to actually go back to the land and generate income through value-added products or raising hens or sheep or any kind of like physical labor that's needed on the land. So he's been a huge inspiration. That is a picture of his wonderful family. You can see his broken foot, his eldest daughter, me and Bisan and his wife. And of course, very Palestinian of him. On the way out, he gives me this wonderful gift of this gourd and these beautiful almonds that he harvested from a nearby tree. Just to highlight some more of Khadir's amazing work, he is a seed saver with the Palestinian Heirloom Seed Library. He is the cultivar of native trees in his area, specifically almonds, which are dying out because of pests and disease, and also the introduction of foreign trees that are taking over. He's working on food sovereignty in his village and empowering young men in his community to return to the land. Imra Day. I think for the Roots of Resilience, I was very inspired and gung-ho about sharing all of these stories and really broadcasting what I was learning with my community while I was in Palestine. And by the time I got to Imra Day's farm, aka Hakuritna's farm, I lost the will to actually share and tell stories because I was so utterly destroyed and heartbroken. I actually started withdrawing and going backward mentally and emotionally. Imra Day shared a very powerful story about how she got into agriculture. She's from a village on the coast of Palestine called Khalid. And as we know about a lot of Native people, your soul kind of wants to return to where your roots are. They were displaced in 1948, and she grew up in a refugee camp with a longing to be by the water. If she gets onto the highest level of her house, she can see the coast, she can see the water glistening, but because of the separation wall, her kids, 3 of them who are around my age, have never been to the beach. She met her husband in a refugee camp, and they bonded over their love of Palestinian dance. And that was their act of resistance. They would organize the kids in the refugee camp and teach them Palestinian dance and build community through that. Her husband was arrested under administrative detention, which means that the state of Israel can arrest you, put you in jail for unlimited amounts of time with no trial, with no charges, release you, and then rearrest you any time they want. So over the course of her marriage, her husband was arrested and incarcerated for around 15 years. And in between that, they would would have children. So she would get pregnant, he would be arrested for a couple of years, come out, she'd get pregnant again. I was fortunate enough to meet 2 of her children, who are all amazing, wonderful men. She got into agriculture out of need, not out of desire. So when she was pregnant with her first child, she was struggling financially, and the only way that she could generate income was through returning to the land. She used the remainder of her savings to buy a lamb that had a little kid, and she was able to sell that, and she kept doing that until her husband came out. They ended up purchasing a plot of land, I think it's around 32 dom. I don't know what that is in acres, but let's just use the word acres. And they cultivated a beautiful organic farm called Hakuritna. And in the early 2000s, the state of Israel came in and confiscated a portion of their farmland to build the separation wall. Yes, so no permission needed, they just came in and built the wall. Not only that, but there's actually a watchtower, which you can see here, directly on their land. And since October 7th, they have actually been targeted multiple times. Her son has been shot at. They had several greenhouses on their property, but since October 7th, they are not allowed to actually keep the plastic on there because the watchtower needs to see inside of the structures. And if any farmers are in this space, or I'm sure people realize the importance of greenhouses to agriculture as far as like temperature control, pest reduction, and all sorts of things that help you kind of like advance in the season. They're no longer allowed to use their greenhouses. All of the sides need to be raised up, which limits the amount of crops that they can actually grow. Fast forward a couple of years, another Israeli business came in and actually built a chemical processing plant on another portion of their farm. So when I was writing the story on this, I called this place a heaven between 2 hells, because only a farmer can be in this space and envision what it once looked like before Israel had confiscated the land and installed the separation wall and the chemical processing plant. One of the things that really horrified me was actually this watchtower. They would also send out drones while they were working in the fields that would just kind of like watch them all day long and just intimidate them. I put this picture up of this man right here. You can't really tell what he's doing, but it's very intentional. Bisan and I were actually standing on the other side. Obviously, I took this picture, right? And right behind him is the watchtower. This man saw us in the direct line of danger and actually quietly got out of his car and stood to block us from the site of the watchtower, just to be in that kind of like view, blocking any access or any danger that may come our way. One other thing that I want to add about what broke my heart about Hakuritna Farm was that the chemical processing plant releases this soot, this like ash, this chemical residue that's coming out of their exhaust fans, and it's also layering all of their crops with God knows what type of contamination. So while I was there, their greenhouses were covered with this like almost like ash-like substance, which also blocks sun from actually entering into the greenhouse space itself. This is her son O'Day, who was very generously picking out a small little olive tree to gift me. I was super, super appreciative for that. And just some points about Hakuritna Farm and what it was at one point prior to Israel confiscating half of their land. So at one point there were 32 acres, they're now down to 16. They once had a beautiful apiary. They were leaders in agriculture technology, with a lot of the universities coming over for field trips and educational programs, which also helped the farm sustain income. The field trips no longer are possible because of the dangers on this farm. Hakuritna Farm is located in Tulkarem, which is a highly militarized area in Palestine. Tulkarem, just for background information, they don't have paved streets since October 7th. So one form of collective punishment, though no one from Tulkarem was involved in October 7th, was the destruction of their streets. So bulldozers have come in and actually razed all of their streets, including all of the businesses. All of the storefronts have completely been destroyed. Like nothing exists there. We actually caught a flat on these roads while touring. They had a beautiful aquaponics system at one point prior to all this destruction. They had an amazing compost program going, and other farmers would come and actually take some of their compost, and a beautiful olive tree nursery. Since October 7th, people can't reach their land, and this farm got stuck with 40,000 olive trees. So they were not actually able to sell this stock of olive trees because of what's happening since October 7th with the land confiscations, the Israeli settler attacks, and also the roadblocks. Hani and Bisan are two wonderful and amazing people that are visionaries, forward thinkers, and people that are inspiring generations of young people in Palestine to not only return to the land, but to really return to food as a whole, teaching people culinary skills and giving them opportunities to come out and learn about native harvesting, learn about how to cultivate and cook new things. So they started, Hani and Bisan started something in Palestine called the Fallahin community, which means the farming community. They're working on creating educational videos, learning from the elders, specifically in Manhattan, teaching youth, supporting local farmers, and supporting the local food economy. We were in this beautiful village called Batir, which is a World UNESCO Heritage Site known for their beautiful agricultural terraces that they farm on. And while we were sitting down drinking some tea, we saw this elder who was moving all of these rocks. And I think the reason why we get along so well is because we're very much action-oriented. So we just looked at each other and we're like, are we gonna just let this guy move all these stones, or are we gonna get up and do something about it? And so we actually got up, and in 15 minutes, we moved so many of the rocks that he was using to create little borders with, and I wanted to feature that.
Good morning, everyone. This is Bisan Hassan. I am the founder of Thobna. Thobna is a platform that documents and talks about preserving Palestinian culture in all of its forms, specifically and most importantly, land and agriculture. I met Lana in a tour that I organized in Palestine while she was visiting last year. And we found our connection mainly through land. I work in alternative tourism, and tourism that highlights mostly land, agriculture, farmers, their stories, and everything around that. During this specific olive harvest season, we have been trying to work on being with farmers, with Palestinian families who are trying to reach their land to harvest olives. It's been very difficult. It's been a bloody season, and what we try to do is basically gather as much volunteers as we can, and also try to help, in commuting, maybe equipment they would need in order for Palestinians to be able to harvest olives. It's not safe, it's very dangerous, it's been very risky even getting to any piece of land, no matter how close it is to your home, to your village, to your town. As settlers attack people, the army arrests Palestinians who try to harvest olives. So it's been very challenging, but we are here, we will always be here. This is part of our existence, this is part of resistance in Palestine. Land is everything. Land is everything for us Palestinians, and this is what we try to, help as much as possible with farmers, farming, staying connected to our land. We are farmers. We are born connected to this land. Everything of heritage, culture, history, lifestyle we have in Palestine is mainly connected to our land. That's why I find it very important to support Palestinian farmers. Support comes in various different forms, and that's what we try to work on all the time while we organize trips, tours, experiences, projects all around Palestine. Those days are specifically very difficult on Palestinians all around Palestine. Farmers suffer a lot. Occupation tries as much as possible to disconnect Palestinians from their land, and this is basically done in various forms of robbing land from Palestinians, not allowing farmers to reach their land, ruining, burning land and crops, and specifically this time of the year happens to be the olive harvest. Olive harvest is extremely important for Palestinians, and it's among tens of other harvest seasons. We are facing a bloody harvest season. Palestinian farmers not only not being allowed to reach their land, but they are being humiliated, they are being attacked, they are being even shot dead while trying to reach their land. A lot of the land spaces have been taken away from Palestinian farmers, and we try to support farmers in order for them to, even if they can't reach their further land, to be able to plant the closest land they have to their house, to their work, to their family house. So this is what we have been doing with Lana. She visited this summer, and we toured around all of the West Bank, trying to connect with as much as we could of Palestinian farmers, people that we knew before and we had a lot of work with before, and even new farmers that we met for the first time this summer. Support comes in many various forms, like I mentioned. Being there with farmers, educating people on farming in Palestine, and also financially trying to support those farmers since everything has been difficult on them. So we always hope for people to know more about Palestine and to be more connected, and this is what we have been trying to do with Lana: documentation, being with farmers in the land, trying to support them physically and work with them, organize voluntary trips, trying to pay for many losses they've been facing the last specifically year that passed. So we really would like to thank everyone who has been part of this, who is always there, and who's always trying to support in any form.
Bisan touched on something very, very important, and that is the actual dispossession of land, specifically since October 7th. The farmer that we introduced, Khaled, he sent me a voice note yesterday telling me that he's experiencing some horrific things that are very new to him. He doesn't even know how to respond. As we mentioned, Israeli settlers have been very emboldened and have gone AWOL in the West Bank. It's absolutely crazy. He's been pushed off of his land multiple times this month, and so in response to that, what he's been trying to do is actually wake up even earlier and start picking his olives earlier and sending them off the land in small batches. And in response to that, the settlers have almost started outsmarting them. So basically they wait for them to finish harvesting all of the olives, and then will show up with the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, and then confiscate all of their harvest. And this is a family, a father of 5 who's supporting his wife, 5 children, and his mother. To bring this even closer to home, my grandparents suffered something very similar last year where they weren't able to reach their olive groves because of an Israeli outpost that was stationed in an area very close to our village. When I was in Palestine, I almost insisted, I had begged my grandfather to take me there because I actually wanted to see it with my own eyes. By the time we got there, my grandfather was like, oh wow, it went from 1 to like now 6. So what they do is they put these, what are those things that are on the trucks? Like cargo shipments, trailers, and they create like little settlements. And it went from having 1 to having 6. When I talked to my grandfather last week, he told me that now they have established a road from one mountain onto our land directly, and they are now harvesting my grandfather's olive groves. So that whole entire endeavor is gone, so I won't be receiving any olive oil this year, which is really sad. But also the families that actually harvest my grandfather's trees will not be able to harvest, split those olives, and actually generate income this year. So it's really about starving people in Palestine financially and economically through land dispossession. Okay, so I am going to open it up to Q&A if anybody has any questions, and while I do that, I am going to have this little slideshow playing in the back, which features some photos from my trip this year in Palestine.
First time on a round of applause for Lana. Is that fantastic? Thank you so much. Okay, we'll open up any questions. I'll come around and tell everyone you're next. We don't have a lot of time, so let's just get right into it. If you raise your hand, I'll come around and say, you're it.
So what are the best things that we could do to support you?
So, in my honest opinion, it's direct action. It's supporting small grassroots organizations, because what we're seeing on the ground in Palestine is a lot of these larger nonprofits are raking in a lot of donations, and the funds that people are receiving are literally being trickled in to the point where people are like, where's all this money going? You know what I mean? In the case of what I'm doing right now with Roots of Resilience, we are building up a very small grassroots nonprofit. It's me and a couple of friends. We are super fortunate to have received a fiscal sponsor because of the amount of money that's coming in. So we are now fiscally sponsored, so if you contribute to us directly, you can receive a tax, you can get a tax deduction. So that's one way. There's also a lot of things happening here locally. So you can connect with families, buy olive oil. I saw some posts on some recent Facebook groups, on Instagram, where people here in the States are actually trying to help their families abroad by selling olive oil. So that's another way.
Great question. Next, John.
What's it feel like to see in the West Bank day to day? Like, what was your life like? Did you run into IDF a lot, that type of thing?
Yeah.
Can you just repeat the question so people?
So he asked me what it was like for me to be in the West Bank and if I ran into any issues with the IDF. I'm super fortunate, so I carry an American passport. I do not have a Palestinian ID, which means that I was able to move more freely than my mother. For example, if we were going to travel to Jerusalem, which is 15 minutes from our village, I can go through the Hizma checkpoint because I'm an American citizen, but my mother, who carries the U.S. citizenship and a Palestinian citizenship, has to go through another checkpoint called Galandia, which adds about 3 hours commute time. So that's one thing. Did I run into the IDF? Yes, I sure did. On the way to Nablus, which is another very highly militarized town, there was crazy traffic, and by the time we kind of like slowly moved through this very tight, narrow road, we realized that there was the IDF that were searching somebody's house. My daughters were in the back seat of the car, and just like anybody, you're a nosy bystander in traffic. Of course, you're gonna look at the tank or the Jeep that's right next to you, along with the soldiers that were right next to you. About 15 or 20 feet probably by this door right here were 2 IDF soldiers, and we're all just kind of like gawking at them. They looked like they could have been anywhere from like 18 to 20 years old, like literal children in my eyes. And the IDF soldiers turned their guns from the side straight directly at our car. My daughter, who was 16 at the time, started shaking. She was very nervous the whole time in Palestine. She started trembling and shaking. She's like, Mama, Mama, he just pointed his gun at us. And the only thing that I can actually respond with was, don't let them put fear in your heart. Literally, that was my instinctual response, was do not give them. It's all fear and intimidation, and I wasn't going to give that to them. The day-to-day was hard. The nearest city to our village was Ramallah, which usually takes about 20 minutes, give or take. But since October 7th, all of the roads that make it easier to get to these larger hospitals, supermarkets have been closed. So we would have to travel about an hour to an hour and a half just to get to a supermarket. And this is all post October 7th. So the day-to-day, the whole thing about occupation is literally making life unlivable so that people find a way to leave Palestine, to leave and abandon their homes, their places, their businesses, and all of that stuff. So it was really difficult being there, more difficult for them, like I said, than myself. I was only there for 27 days, so I can almost tolerate and put up. But you name it, roadblocks, checkpoints, the fear of being on shared roads because settlers would hide and then throw bricks at cars. Danger is pretty much everywhere.
I saw Greg first.
Well, I appreciate everything you do here and in Montclair. How has it been as a director of a nonprofit in the United States and being a Palestinian that has to speak out? How has that journey been? Have you been threatened, or how do you feel as far as being in that position?
Did everybody hear that one? Yeah. So I am the executive director of an organization called Montclair Community Farms. Up until October 7th, I was under the impression that Montclair was a very progressive town. I dedicated my blood, sweat, and tears in building community and food sovereignty, only to find that Montclair is very Zionist. And so post-October 7th, anyone familiar with Secret Montclair? Yeah, so I fell into the very emotional trap of trying to humanize Palestinians as a Palestinian who has lived in the occupied territory and as a Palestinian that watched the separation wall be built in 2003 and 2006. As a Palestinian that lost the right to my education because our professors who spoke English were not allowed to cross that checkpoint anymore. In response to that, people targeted me and they started sending letters to our sponsors and our funders asking them to avoid supporting the work of Montclair Community Farms while it's under my directive, specifically. Yeah, it was pretty wild. I'm super fortunate, if I'm going to be honest, to have a board that backs me 110%. They not only love me, but they trust me, they know my intentions, they know what I'm about, what I stand for, and they were like, go get it. Like, respond the way that you want to respond, and, if we lose funders, oh well, we'll get new funders. And that really empowered me to keep going with my actions, with my protests, and my social media posts, though I will say I no longer argue with Zionists. So thank you. I'll save my energy for the love and appreciation that we can garner by organizations like this and community like this. So thank you for being here. And good question, right?
Okay, I saw there, and doing the back. That's the order, though. Okay, right here first, please.
Question. I can connect you directly. Yeah, so somebody's asking where we can buy the olive oil. I, along with my friends that are supporting Roots of Resilience, will do everything that we can to kind of promote these small businesses and initiatives. So if you follow me on Instagram, I will be posting links and Google Forms for all of these things. Other than that, it's really just like direct connections. Max?
Thank you for all of the incredible work that you do in such integrity, especially in the community. In addition, I think to buying Palestinian olive oil is making sure that you're not buying products that are produced and stolen from Palestinian land with the label of Israel. Some of those products being sold right here in Montclair, actually nuts and fruits. I'll let you figure out where those nuts and fruit shops are, but they're kind of obvious in town right now.
Thank you for that. Yep.
In the back.
Field Ave and our Park Street.
Oop.
The new one for that?
Correct.
Yes, thank you so much for this, and thanks to Peace Action for organizing and holding this here to us. I don't know if you saw or heard a radio program on WNYC by Mary Louise Kelly about 6 months ago. She actually went to an olive orchard and did a whole story and had guns pointed at them, the whole thing. It was very dramatic. And this is not recent. This has been going on a long time, I believe. And what I'm hoping is that you'll have maps that show the original homesteads of people so that we can reclaim those for people justly. I'm very concerned about the settlers, which maybe is not the correct term. The term is displacers. Usurpers, and I have heard that they come from Brooklyn.
Very true.
You can let her answer.
From Brooklyn.
Yeah, there's a lot of Zion.
Yes, of course. A lot of the extremist settlers that are actually occupying land in the West Bank are from the United States of America. Actually, my mom, while on a checkpoint, very sarcastically asked one of the IDF soldiers, because his accent seemed so American, where he was from, and he was actually from Teaneck, New Jersey. Yeah, so it's true.
And what happened to the sanctions on the West Bank settlers that Biden put in place early on? Did anything happen to that?
Not that I can speak to be honest. I mean, I know as far as like last week they're expanding into like our home village up off Mass. So I don't know what sanctions or these empty air promises Biden is giving people. Like, I don't know what to say about that, honestly. It's like, no, nothing is happening. Nothing that I've seen on the ground, nothing that I've heard of on the ground. People are acting as complete impunity as far as like West Bank territories are concerned, and it's a opportunity for them to seize and do as much damage while the eyes are on Gaza, really.
Well, Peace Action is very good at lobbying, and I think your story needs to be put in front of a bunch of senators and congresspeople. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your question.
Mary, did you have a question? Was it Mary? You're okay, you have time for one more then, please.
So do you have any suggestions for how people can highlight Palestinian voices more? And because I'm of Russian and Jewish background, and I have no idea how many of my friends and family members are like Zionists in their core, point blank, and I try to bring on the topic, they just think that I'm a terrorist sympathizer. So like anytime I bring up anything that's like trying to sympathize Palestinian, like they just see it as like Hamas propaganda. And so I think like a lot of people like you're describing, like not there's so progressive on all these different topics when it comes to this topic, it just feels like there's like a wall. And it feels like people aren't really seeing Palestinians, even the children as people are seeing them as like consumed as terrorists. So like what can we do to change that so people actually like
That's a really great question. I don't know that was a really long one. She's asking what we can do as a community, or what she can do specifically as a Russian, a Russian Jew, to help her family, I guess, understand the Palestinian plight. And how we can raise Palestinian voices. I think opportunities like this, granted to us as far as like telling our own narratives, are very, very important. I think there has been a huge push on social media from young Palestinians. I think we have finally been empowered within ourselves to actually take action and take control of the narrative. It took us a couple of generations to like assimilate, learn the language, learn our counter arguments, but we're here now. As you guys can see from the momentum right now, it's mostly youth-led. So any opportunity to kind of raise Palestinian voices is 100% approved. I think that's the best way to do it. And start by trying to rehumanize, like, hello, like these people have been on the land for hundreds of years. Like, the grains that Imam Hadab is cultivating are older than the state of Israel. You want to talk about terrorist supporters, right? It's like, listen, I own a house in Clifton, New Jersey. If somebody knocked on my door and said, hey, I'm of X background and my family was here 200 years ago and now your house is mine, I'm going to resist that in every form that I possibly can. And I don't know what tools you can use to help make that connection. I also don't know if it's worth your time and energy, honestly. Like, some people just have this mental block and are just so set in their ways that they're just unreachable. So it's really a matter of like picking and choosing your battles. You can spend a lot of energy trying to get your family to see, or you can just do the work of supporting and uplifting Palestinian voices and hope that they'll come around. But some people are beyond reach, in my opinion. Oh, there's a lot.
Okay, yeah, there's a lot of questions.
One final question I want to add to that.
Yes.
You use documentaries. Mostly they're made by former Zionists.
Yes.
Have been able to change.
That's a good point. So she's saying to refer them to watching some very important documentaries. I think there's one that I personally have seen that I was like almost shocked by. I don't know if anybody has watched the documentary called Israelism. That's a really great one.
I'm sorry, we have to put up the questions at this point because we are running really late, but we really appreciate that. I'm going to ask real quickly if you can tell us, you mentioned you were writing about one of your experiences. Do you have a blog or somewhere we can go? And what's the best way to contact you with social media?
Oh, thank you so much. So I do want to take a moment once again to thank New Jersey Peace Action for inviting me to do this talk and sharing some of my personal experience. If you want to learn more about the work that I'm doing with Roots of Resilience, I am on Facebook, I am on Instagram, Lana Mustafa on Facebook, and this be Lana on Instagram. That's where I share my stories. If you want to support some of the farmers that we talked about directly, there is a QR code on your table where you can donate. If there's any confusion about the landing page, because we're such a small nonprofit, we needed to kind of work with another partner as a fiscal sponsor to protect ourselves because of the situation being so precarious and money coming in, right? So you got to do your due diligence. So our friends who run a farm, Finca Luna Bujo in Massachusetts, are fiscally sponsoring us. So you can do a direct donation there. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.